Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hello, welcome, everyone. This is Life List, a birding podcast with Molly Brown, Alvaro Jaramillo, me, George Armistead. Today, we have with us an author that I really have admired for a while and have been enjoying her work, and that is Rosemary Mosco, who is a cartoonist originally from Canada, but now in Massachusetts, and has authored, a couple different books, one on pigeons and now a new bird dictionary. And Rosemary, it's really great to have you here. We're excited to talk about pigeons and the bird dictionary. And how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm also very excited to be here. It's so funny. I appreciate the kind words. And also, as a writer, when you're doing all of this stuff alone in your house, I feel like I really don't realize that other people are going to read things. So when they say, "Oh, I like your work," I'm like, "Oh, right. There's an audience that's out there, and it's not just me alone silently editing my work in my little dark cave." So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. And we've been thinking about you for a while to do an episode with us. So your books are the latest book is the Birding Dictionary, and I want to talk about that. But the other one that I really loved was the you had an article called "Why City Pigeons Are Worth Watching," but you also have your pocket guide to pigeon watching. How did you fall in love with the pigeon?
I think I've always liked them. I am a city girl, so I grew up in different cities in Canada and in the US. I'm one of those people who's lucky to be a dual citizen. I had an American dad and a Canadian mom, and as a result, when you're a birder and you live in a city, you start seeing city birds. And I always just liked how they came in a lot of different colors. I didn't really understand why that was, but I thought that was kind of fun when I was a kid. Other kids in the neighborhood would bring me sick pigeons when there were pigeons that needed nursing. So I always kind of liked them. But then a few years ago, I sort of started to ask myself, well, why are they everywhere? And I started to do some research, and I realized that they are hugely misunderstood and misjudged. And then I became intense about changing people's minds about pigeons. So there was kind of a shift where at first I just kind of appreciated them, and then I became dogmatic about them. And I definitely still am.
Nice.
Did you, well, first of all, Canadian content. Where did you grow up in Canada? I live we were talking earlier about living in California, but now I live in Prince Edward County in Ontario, down south of Kingston. So,
that's
Picton,
wonderful.
if you know that area. Does that around where you grew up or
yeah,
in the
so
West?
I grew up in Ottawa mostly. I also lived in Montreal, went to school in Montreal. I lived in Toronto for a while, but and so you can tell I lived in Toronto because I say it Toronto.
Right, not
starts
Toronto.
with a CH. Yeah, but no, mostly Ottawa. But no, I'm familiar with that area. It's great for birds. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
wonderful, wonderful area.
Cool. That's good to know. I didn't realize you were Canadian. You hide it in there. You pass as an American,
I've been
have
here
for a long
enough.
time.
Yeah, I know the accent starts to go away, but the moment I cross the border up there, I'm like, "Oh, how's it going, eh?" Ooh.
Yeah, that's
it
right.
just comes right back.
Yeah, right. It's really funny. That's great. So pigeons. You have pigeons in Canada too. You have pigeons everywhere. I mean, I was just trying to, as you were talking about them being everywhere, it is true. I was actually surprised that I've been at this new place for a bit this summer. I have only seen one pigeon fly by, the backyard. It took me ages to see a pigeon. And I know Molly was saying she doesn't see pigeons where she is, and how, although we think of them as everywhere, they're in fact specific to certain habitats. And I think my pigeon was like a racing pigeon. I think it was kind of like blasting away, going somewhere, but I don't know. I mean, It's like, yeah, what's your thoughts about where pigeons aren't?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite facts because a lot of people have said to me, well, why do you like pigeons? They're an invasive species. And I think it's really interesting because invasive has a definition, right? So it's not just species that are found where they weren't originally because people moved them, but it's also species that cause problems. But what's interesting is that for the most part, not always, for the most part, pigeons are just kind of where people transported them to. So they're not in natural areas, quote unquote natural areas. So they're not in the redwoods. They're not like flying across the tundra. They are around big concentrations of people. And they will be found in urban areas and suburban areas. They like farm fields too. They'll hang around grain a lot. But if you're living in a place that doesn't have a lot of people around or is like a very natural area, you typically won't see them, which sort of partly speaks to how they don't seem to affect native wildlife all that much. The exception is that there's a potential for them to spread disease to local pigeon and dove species, members of the family Columbidae. So I think in the Galapagos, they were extinguished so that they wouldn't spread disease to the native doves. But that's the only example I've come across. For the most part, they are native to us. So they are where people are concentrated.
We are their habitat.
It's an interesting way to look at it, but makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fairly recently that we were talking about seeing pigeons in our yards. And I absolutely love pigeons. I am rarely in a city or an urban area, but and it's funny, I don't get the chance to voice that very much. But I have a very vivid memory of being really young and in like maybe my car seat in the back seat of a car and watching a flock of pigeons flying parallel to the car at the same speed that we were going, which is actually in an area of West Virginia where they're nesting in like rock crevices and more traditional habitat, I suppose. So I'll never forget that. And even the other day, a few pigeons flew over as I was birding in town, and like just watching a group of pigeons, I think is absolutely gorgeous. And it's really cool to get to celebrate that and have this conversation.
That makes me really happy. Now my job is done. I can leave. People here already like pigeons.
Totally.
Yeah. That's what's so special about them is because they're found near people. A lot of people have early memories of experiencing them. And I think those birds that give us that kind of early contact I think they're really important. I mean, partly why I got into pigeons was that my dad grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the tenements, like the grandson of immigrants, Italian immigrants. And it was a rough neighborhood. And he remembers seeing three kinds of birds. He remembers the little brown ones, which were house sparrows, and the medium-sized gray ones, which were pigeons, and then seagulls. Those were his three kinds of birds. But for him, that was nature. That was like the natural contact that he had with birds and with all wildlife. And I think that matters. It really does. Even if, some of us are tired of pigeons, some of us are more urban.
Yeah. One of the things I have I both admire it about them and find it frustrating about them is I think of them from like an identification standpoint as like the ultimate shapeshifters. They can look like a flock of shorebirds. They can look like a falcon zipping by. They just give you a lot of different looks. And for years at the Cape May Hawk Watch down there, they would call them bunker merlins because there's these old World War II bunkers, and they'll sit up on the bunkers, or you'll see one just go ripping by the Hawk Watch, just zipping by a million gazillion miles an hour, and everyone's like Merlin, and then it goes and lands on the bunker, and they're like, oh, that's not a Merlin, yeah, but they really are just incredible shapeshifters. Dynamic flyers, as Molly, you were kind of alluding to seeing a flock of them when they are, in a farm field or moving together is pretty entertaining, especially if you get a nice, sort of salt and pepper mix with I love those rust colored variants. They're a lot of fun, and I think. a couple like sort of pigeons I've seen in the wild that were interesting and memorable. I used to do, I've done a number of tours to Morocco, and there's one spot in particular where we would really look hard to find rock pigeons because the thinking was that there was this cliff face, I think it was up north of Marrakesh, and that the ones in the mountains there all breeding on the cliff face were actually true wild, going back, centuries. They're of sort of wild origin, which is not something a lot of people see, is actually sort of quote unquote in the wild pigeons. Yeah. And then I've noticed too, a lot of the ones we see here in the States, the pigeons we see flying around, they've got, big white rump patch. And I haven't gone and done the research on this, but in India, they don't have that. And in some places I've seen them, they call them blue pigeons. And I don't know if there's actually any, that's a taxonomic entity that is different than pigeons elsewhere, or if it's merely just a plumage variation or what. But I always notice that when I'm in India, is that they lack the white rump altogether.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things about pigeons is, so they were domesticated so long ago that we're bumping up against the dawn of recorded writing. So a lot of folks don't know that, when they see pigeons, at least this one particular city pigeon species, Columba livia, they're seeing a domesticated animal, and not just an animal that we've domesticated, but one that we have messed with. I say we, I mean people from pigeon keeping nations, for 5,000 years, maybe 10,000 years. We don't really know. It's so long. And then we've been manipulating these birds, and then we've been transporting them. India has a really old pigeon keeping culture. Like a lot of the famous breeds come from India. The Mughal emperors were really into pigeons, like really, really into pigeons. Like they would fly pigeons around to cow worldly men into obedience. And there's just a really, really long history of pigeon keeping all around the world. And pigeons don't tend to travel really far. Like there are pigeons that will fly a long way because they've been left somewhere to fly home because of a race. But for the most part, the local pigeons are sort of the result of the pigeons that went feral there, however long ago pigeons were brought over. So thousands of years in the case of, places like Morocco or places like India. And in the US, it was more like the 1600s that they were brought over. And there was a great study by Elizabeth Carlin and some collaborators, I think, who showed that pigeons in Boston and pigeons in New York don't intermix. Like there's a bit of green space in between the two and they don't cross it. So whichever group of pigeons you're seeing in a local area, that's representative of that unique mix of breeds for that area, which I think is so, so cool. So if you go to Honolulu, most of the pigeons you'll see are white. And it's because of all the weddings. People dump white birds for weddings because we can't tell the difference between pigeons and doves, and there isn't really a taxonomic difference. So a lot of those pigeons are white. So I think probably what you're seeing with India versus the ones in the US are just like which breeds those ones stemmed from. I would be really curious about the Morocco ones because I know that because pigeons have been domesticated for so long and moved around, we're talking, millennia of change. It's not clear where there are any wild pigeons left. There are pigeons in a lot of places that have sort of reverted to living in cliff sides. Like I've even seen them in Toronto, like outside of Toronto, in sandy cliffs and stuff. There was a study a few years ago that looked at pigeons in the Outer Hebrides, these islands off Scotland, and found that those ones had limited introgression from domestic birds. So they were mostly, pure wild birds. But even then, there was like a little bit of feral genetics getting in there. So I just think it's so interesting. This is a bird that we have so heavily manipulated and changed and localized. I just think that makes them so cool.
This reminds me that like my supervisor's supervisor, so he was at the University of Kansas, Richard Johnston. He I remember seeing like his when I was in Kansas with my supervisor, he said, "Oh, Richard Johnson studied pigeons on these cliffs over here, and how they've reverted back to cliff nesting, and they started looking like wild pigeons. Like all this is coming back. Is that ring a? It
Wait,
seems
the
like it rings
Richard
a bell with
Johnston
you. Yeah,
from
yeah,
Johnston and Janiga's
yeah.
book, The Feral Pit, the book. Okay, yes, I think I paid $300 or $400 for that book
Really?
for
Well,
my research.
I was
That
a
is the
student
book.
of
There's
his
no other
student.
book. It's so good. Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my, yeah, that book is incredible. And I had to get it for my research. And it's so big that I couldn't photocopy the whole thing from the local library. So I shelled out an exorbitant amount of money to get
Big
a
money.
copy of it. You can't find it anywhere. It's a beautiful book.
Huh.
There are other books about feral pigeons, but that's like the most scientific treatment in a giant volume. Oh, I am excited. It's like I'm 6
yeah, because
degrees of
he was
separation.
interested in like evolution of birds, but he thought that pigeons, kind of as Darwin did. I mean, and his whole first chapter is about pigeons, right? Kind of that this was a great model to think about, in terms of like understanding how things change, because we've changed them. So it's interesting, cool. What a connection.
Yeah, Darwin was a huge pigeon nerd. It's really funny because he wasn't at first. Like he didn't like pigeons early on. But when he was working on the origin of species, he was sort of like, okay, I need some kind of creature that I can manipulate, and I need something I can have in my yard and I can interbreed and mess with. And his friends told him, okay, you need pigeons. Pigeons were all the rage. Like you should get some pigeons, bring them home, keep them in your backyard. And he was like, oh, pigeons, those are boring. And then he got some and he fell head over heels in love with them. He was obsessed with them. He talked to everybody about them, and he kind of messed with them. And he figured out that, so there was this theory at the time that all the different pigeon breeds, which looked as different as, say, a Chihuahua versus a Great Dane, that all the pigeon breeds were separate species. But Darwin thought they were all from this one species, Columbolivia. And that was what he sort of supported, was that view, by interbreeding them and showing that he could kind of change them to look like that original breed. But he was really into them. And I like that trajectory of not liking pigeons to liking pigeons, because I think it's one we should maybe all consider.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about species now that can be I don't want to say modified, like that can exhibit that like rapid evolution kind of thing. Because I've seen a lot of studies about domesticating foxes and then reverting them, and how like physical features are changed really quickly in quick generations. And on the flip side, I was just in Alaska and reading something about domesticating muskox, and that there was a statement that it takes 200 years to domesticate an animal, which kind of made me roll my eyes and thought that was pretty arbitrary to throw out. But I guess there are specific species that can show really rapid phenotypic changes when you're doing these domestication measures, right? Do any of you know about this? I'm very intrigued.
I would say it has to partially do with their generation lengths, right? If you have something that takes a while to mature, and then you have the next generation, it's going to take you way more time, way more iterations to actually get that change. But if the generation length is short, like a pigeon kid would probably breed within a year and have another pigeon kid, then you can quit more quickly. That's my initial thought. I don't know, Rosemary, if that kind of matches.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, because we don't know anything about the early history of domestication. Domestication is such a mess too. I learned, I sort of had this view of it as, like How to Train Your Dragon, where like the guy, meets the dragon, he puts his hand out, and then that's like the moment of connection. Like I was like, oh, that's what happened with pigeons. But apparently it happened with all domesticated animals, probably multiple times in multiple places. So it's sort of a messy, complicated affair. So I don't know much about the early history. Pigeons do have, they can have 13 babies a year on average. Like they have so many babies. So they're a useful animal because of their quick generation time. But I think it's probably messy too. So a lot of pigeons, especially the fancy breeds, will have a little crest that sticks up on the back of their head. And I learned that there's a guy named Michael Shapiro and his team at the University of Utah that figured out that crest, I think it was him, that crest evolved once. Basically, there was one pigeon that had a crest of feathers that stuck up the wrong way in the back of the head. And then that was captured by humans and bred, and now there's hundreds of crested breeds. And I think it's cool that there will sometimes be just a spontaneous change that happens, and then that gets adopted. So
And passed along.
it's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a random question that's quasi-related and also relates to cartoons. So, did you ever read the book "Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus"?
Yeah, I love that one. That's a picture book I've given to adults. It's so good. It's
Okay.
a really good pigeon book. Yeah,
Just-
yeah.
There's no a club of pigeon cartoon / illustrators or that kind of
There's
trade.
a Facebook group for,
Yeah,
for you
Facebook
guys.
group or-
Yeah.
Oh, I wish. Yeah, Mo Willems, reach out to me. We're in the same club. Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I wish.
No, I always
Yeah.
love that book. Which if anybody's not aware of, it's basically a bus driver who has to go take a break and then says, "Well, don't let the pigeon drive the bus." And then the pigeon's just relentless, wanting to drive this bus and gives you a million reasons why it should. But it's sort of for kids to learn about no, like that they're like, no matter what, sometimes you just have to not, I think that's
The
what
answer is
lesson
no.
was. The
Yeah.
answer is kind of no, but it's fun. Because the kid themselves is thinking that it's probably not a good idea if this pigeon drives the bus. It's like really not a good idea. But anyway, I just thought that came out of left field, but I was thinking about it. And did you start illustrating before you started getting into biology, or was it all kind of all happen? Let us know. How did it all happen?
Yeah, I've been drawing forever. And I've been into nature forever. And I think a lot of why I started cartooning was because I grew up in the, late 80s, early 90s. So that was the heyday of the newspaper comics, world. And everybody just had tons and tons and tons of these kind of pulpy collections of newspaper comics. And I read all of them. And I thought, oh, well, this is a cool way to get people excited and get them laughing. But I'm really in nature. So what if I made them about nature? And that was sort of really early on, I was doing that. But then I started to think, okay, who is blending art and science? This is not something that's possible. I'm going to have to make a career out of doing one or the other. And luckily, I sort of stumbled into a way to mix both of them. But I really think this was something I was doing when I was a little kid. And I was birding. But, it's funny, birding back then, I didn't know anybody. I birded by myself, and I had a paper life list, this bound book that you got from Audubon Society that had Audubon, prints, and then you would fill in the birds you saw. And I would go out alone and bird. And I thought, this birding is you never talk to anyone. You're alone. And then nowadays there's, eBird and there's bird festivals. It's really nice. It's a more social thing. But yeah, I was just kind of this weird kid who liked birds and liked cartoons and wanted to keep doing both of those, pursuing both of those interests as long as I could.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's tough. Illustration is a tough world. I know friends who are bird illustrators and so forth, and it's often you have to do something else. Sometimes they're a biologist and they work as a biologist and they can do the illustration on the side. But it's so cool that you've been able to put it all together. There's so many articles you've written and illustrated, books, the whole gamut. It's really cool.
One of the ones you did recently and posted on your Instagram, I really loved. It was about shorebirding.
Yeah.
And I'll just read it for folks. It says, "Hey, there's two people, in the in the block, and it says, "Hey," one says to the other, "Hey, do you want to drive really far and spend hours staring at distant, rapidly moving gray-brown objects while trying to find subtle differences between them?" And then the other person says no, and then the first person says, "Well, what if they're bird-shaped?" Then absolutely yes, the answer. And then they say, "Yay, shorebird season." And I really I had just my wife is sort of a casual birder. She likes birding, but stationary birding is not necessarily her favorite thing. But we had just done some shorebirding, and I realized when we got there, I was like, we've never been shorebirding together before, and that standing around looking at distant little brown things running around wasn't exactly her favorite thing. And I was like, I should have thought of this beforehand. But
not a good intro,
yeah. But it really, that one just hit home because I know those people that that are having that conversation.
No hands raised.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hating on shorebirding is also my birder spouse's, but my spouse's favorite thing to do. It is not his forte either, and he and Kristen get along real well. So.
Yeah, that's right.
I feel like this it's fun. I find it really validating when people find those things funny, because sometimes I'm birding or doing some other hobby, and then I just pause and I think, what are we doing here? why do I like this?
Right. How did we end up here doing this right now? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I also really like herping, which is, finding snakes and reptiles and amphibians. And sometimes I'm out, driving, and then there'll be a big snake in the middle of the road, and I stop and I go pick it up, and I'm getting bitten and pooped on and musked, and I'm disgusting, and I'm carrying this ungrateful monster across the road, and I'm just like, what am I doing? What are we doing here? But I'm so happy. I think that's really important. I feel like, I don't know. I was really into a lot of nerdy stuff as a kid, and then kind of as a teen, in my early 20s, I sort of said, oh, I don't know about that stuff. Like, that stuff's weird. It's hard to explain to people. And then after a while, I realized, you like what you like, and so long as it's not hurting anyone, maybe hurting you a little bit when you're getting bit by a snake. But that's just it. And some of the stuff is just hard to explain. But, my dad was a huge baseball fan, and I got kind of into baseball. But when he was trying to explain it to me when I was a kid, I was just equally confused. Like, why do I have to learn what a shortstop is? Like, what? And then I got into it, but there was this early time, where I was just like, what are we doing here? So, yeah, every hobby's like that.
Well, it's pretty cool because, I mean, you do a lot that depicts the hobby and enjoyment side of it, but you're also adding a ton of scientific information. And, I mean, it's a real marriage of the recreational side and the more scientific side of birding in your work as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do a lot of research, maybe too much for everything that I do, and I read a lot of papers and books, and I'll still get things wrong sometimes, but yeah, I try to make things as accurate as possible. Partly because the internet will tell me if I make a mistake, so I want to make sure that I'm keeping things as accurate as well. Yeah, I had a comic recently where I talked about it's just a really silly thing about the abilities that you wish you could have, the bird abilities that you could wish you could have. So, of course, we all wish we could fly or we could sing like a bird, but then I thought of some goofy ones, and one of them was eating pink food and becoming pink like a flamingo.
I saw
and
that.
then as I was drawing it, oh yay! As I was drawing it, I thought, wait a minute. Is the food actually pink, or are they synthesizing, the food to be like? I had this moment of like, what do I actually understand the mechanism here? Is someone going to call me out on this? And then I wrote a whole bunch of papers, and I talked to a bunch of people, and I altered it to say eating shrimp to become pink. And they're brine shrimp. I guess they're technically shrimp, but no one will ever notice that. But I was like, I have to be accurate in this respect.
Right. Like hours of research to change one word, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I'm drawing a pink human being, and, it doesn't make any sense. But I want to be accurate.
Offshore, we sometimes see like whales defecate, and blue whales defecate this huge pink blob from all the krill that they eat. So it's sort of like, it's essentially, flamingos be flying over saying, why didn't you stick that on your, you could have gone pink, but it's the exact same, carotenoid pigment that's just goes through the animal, and that's like it's wild. It's like shrimp. Shrimp are the key.
Wow. I've never seen a blue whale poop. I've seen other whales poop, but that would be amazing. I bet it's a lot.
It's the biggest poop on Earth ever. Bigger than dinosaur poops.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's pink.
Amazing.
And it's pink,
Wow.
which makes it more interesting. If it wasn't pink, it'd be like, oh, it's like,
Wow.
What a beautiful world that we live
that's
in.
right.
Yeah. I also feel like I have seen your comics as long as I've been connected to the birding world on social media. But how long have you been sharing? And at what point did you start using it as a professional outlet? And did you start with the internet, or did you start with publishing, or how did that go?
It's been off and on. I've had different jobs throughout too. I made my first internet cartoon. So I was making cartoons for years. I made, cartoon for the school newspaper kind of thing. But then in 2004, I made my first web comic. That was what, we called them back then, because it was novel to be on the internet. So I made a like long form kind of wistful comic called Bird and Moon, about a bird that meets the moon, and the moon is a bird, and they hang out, they fly around, they have adventures. And so that was 21 years ago. That's a long time ago.
I thought it had been a while.
Yeah, it's been
popular for a while too. So that's pretty cool.
So then in between, I went to grad school. I had different jobs. I unfortunately had I'm okay now, but I had a serious bout of cancer. I've had like a variety of things that made me not draw. So I've been very inconsistent since then, but in the past few years, I've been much more consistent with it. And it's been a real joy. But yeah, it has been a long time. I don't want to think about quite how long. It's a lot. Yeah. I think my comic is old enough to vote, right? And drink alcohol.
To drink.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely to drink alcohol in Canada and Quebec. It's a few years ago, even, because it's younger
in Quebec,
over there.
It's 18.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. And 19 in Ontario.
That's right. So when you're talking about doing research, and you mentioned you sort of being a nature nerd and all that, and you pick up some stuff when you're reading about somebody, and the one that got me, that I was like, I want to ask you, it's like, why is the esker your favorite, glacial feature? I like that.
So I took, I was really lucky to get a really cool master's from a program called the Field Naturalist Program at the University of Vermont. I'm sure they won't mind me saying this. It's an odd program. It's incredible. It's the hardest I've ever worked in my life. But you spend 2 years becoming a naturalist. Like, I found it by thinking, oh, I really want to be like an 18th, 19th century naturalist. And I Googled naturalist grad school, and that was what came up. And we learned about everything: botany, geology, all this stuff. And there was also a science communication component. It was really cool. A lot of it was in the field. But we learned a lot about geology, which was something I knew pretty much nothing about. I encouraged us to study stuff we didn't know anything about, to kind of round ourselves out. So I took a geology class that was mostly in the field. And geology in Vermont, a lot of it is glacial geology, because the glaciers came through and shaped everything. And one day we went to a site, and my geology professor said, okay, tell us what's going on here. Like, you guys figure out what's going on here. And it was a hill, but it was really long and snaky and covered in rocks. And then it split at one point, like it forked into sort of a V. And I was like, this is like an inverse stream. And he was like, yeah. So that is an esker, which is when these glaciers, which were unfathomably huge, started melting, this high pressure river would form under them that would carry the meltwater away. And it would also carry huge boulders. And so an esker is when the ice melted away from around the riverbed at the base of this glacial river. You get this kind of river-shaped hill. And it's so wild that these things exist. Every time I find one, I have to go see it. I just think they're really cool. I know I'm sorry, that's not a birdie thing,
No,
but wow,
the
Eskers, they're
the
so
thing
cool.
is, like, I actually have my favorite glacial feature as well. That's why
Ooh.
I thought there was connection. There's like, I like the drumlin. I don't know if you've heard of the drumlins. Are the kind of teardrop shaped as sand deposits that line up with the movement of the glacier. And because I remember reading, I mean, we were learning all this stuff, kettle lakes and, you know, erratic boulders, eskers, moraines, all these things. But I remember seeing one live, like randomly, way after that course I took. And I was like, holy crap, those are drumlins, and I could see them all lined up. And I almost felt like, a random stranger saying, do you realize there's drumlins here? It was almost
Look,
like
everybody.
this secret like code that I've been given. And I finally saw what the meaning of the code. So, and it's so much so that once after that, years later, I was flying into southern Chile, and I could see drumlin fields underneath. And I'm like, drumlins, it's so certain people, maybe you have to grow up in the north to have your favorite glacial feature, or the far south, Philadelphia, likely not too much going on.
Not
West
so
Virginia,
much.
I don't know. I'm
We
not
don't
sure
really
about
have
West
the
Virginia,
glacial
actually.
features here.
Yeah.
No, not here either. But I was just reading, someone had a little article about how there's this like evolution of becoming a naturalist, and it starts with noticing a plant or an animal and wanting to learn more about it. And as you get into it, then you get into this whole ecology rabbit hole. And after you get through the ecology rabbit hole, then geology is next. And it sounds like y'all are right there.
We had my graduate program had kind of like two metaphors that they kept, or like models that they kept coming back to. One was pieces, patterns, and processes, which I think about a lot. So normally you're talking about pieces like, look, a bird, or that's a rock. But then you have to start thinking, okay, why are they there? Like, what are the patterns? Like, oh, they're all over here. The rocks are all over here. The birds are all over here. And then you have to wonder about the processes behind why they're there. And then we had this layer cake model, which was like looking at the deep geology, and then on top of that is the superficial geology, and on top of that is the soil and the plants and all this stuff. And I feel like this stuff can just give you such a better sense of what is around you, because you understand, you start asking yourself, why is this thing here? Why is there a hill here? Why is there a valley here? And then that can make you a better birder too, because you understand the ecology of the place and the structure of the place. And that blew my mind, because before that program, I would just sort of see a bird and I'd go, oh, that bird is there. And then I would leave. And that, that wasn't like the kind of deep understanding that helps you know why. So yeah. I'm now one of those annoying people who always asks, why is this here though? And sometimes the guides are like, I don't know. Stop asking me.
We on this, we talk about birds here, but we also talk a lot about travel, because we're all lead tours and so forth. And I know you have a book that is kind of like a travel book for kids. Is it the World's Most Adventurous Kid, Atlas Obscura? That's what it's called? And you picked out a bunch of places all over the world where a curious kid might find it interesting. How'd you go about like picking those places? Did you go to all of them, or?
No, I haven't been. Have I been to any of them? I think I've maybe been to one or two. So that was one of my first. So one way you can kind of get into books is you sort of do projects that editors are looking for. And that was one of my first books, which was that I got asked to co-write this book for Atlas Obscura, which is a huge, amazing brand that looks for cool stuff that you wouldn't expect that's off the beaten path. I've used their website a lot. You go anywhere and you look on Atlas Obscura and you see what weird, grave sites and cool, sculptures and stuff are around you. So I got hired to write this book, and it was with Dylan Thuras, who is one of the Atlas Obscura founders. And he gave me a huge list, and he said, okay, here's some places that we could cover. And then I wrote, researched and wrote about them. But some of them I have not been to and I really want to go. And some of them no one wants to go. There was this teetering tree house that's like a huge fire hazard. There's a bunch of different places that you're advised not to go. But yeah, that was such a fun assignment. And I got to work in a lot of science too.
Right.
Into that, which was fun.
Yeah, it's really great that you've been able to do books for kids or young adults, but it lends itself well, right? The imagery it opens up interest in kids, where if it was just text about eskers, they might not read it. But if you saw a crazy picture of this inverted river and ice, you're like, oh wow, look at that. It sort of opens up your mind through the illustration.
Yeah, the illustrator for that one was Joy Ang, who is an unbelievably incredible illustrator. I've written a few picture books, and then I've gotten paired with illustrators, and I'm so lucky because they're incredible. There's nothing like writing a picture book and then having this art come back. And that's just mind blowing. It's an amazing skill. It's really, really cool. I've been really lucky with those projects.
That's so cool. I am so glad that we planned for this interview, because I don't think I'd actually looked at like your website and realized the range of publications that you do. You've done all sorts of stuff. It is so cool to see all of that. I see, your comics a lot, but your newest book is the Birding Dictionary, right?
Yeah, that was really, really fun. My publisher, Workman, who published the Atlas Obscura Explorer's Guide for the World's Most Adventurous Kid and my Pocket Guide to Pigeon Watching, reached out and said, hey, we had a series of humorous hobby dictionaries back in, I think it was like the 80s. And they said, we want to bring that back. Do you want to start the series with a book about bird watching terms, like a humorous dictionary about bird watching? And I was just immediately like, yes, 1,000 times. It's going to be so fun. And then I thought, what if I don't know enough terms? What if there's not enough terms? So I sat down and I wrote a list of all the terms I could think of off the top of my head. And I think there were like 170 of them. And I thought, okay, I think we're going to be fine. And I didn't realize how terminology heavy and slang heavy birding is. But it really is, and it was such a fun project. The book wound up being a little more educational than I thought it would be, but it's also really silly. Like it's just like a pure comedy book, which I hadn't gotten to write. And I had a blast, and I learned a lot. And it's been nice to have a funny book out right now when the world is in chaos. I wasn't expecting how excited people would be for something that's just solidly silly from back to front. So it's been a good experience.
Yeah, I also love that we're big fans of Ed Young, and that he wrote something for your book that's is a fantastic writer with just sort of creative ways of looking at the natural world in his last book. So that's cool. That's
Yeah, he's a birder. He's a huge birder now. Which is really, really cool. I think he started a bird club for people. Is it just people with long COVID? I'm not sure if it's, all sorts of people who are dealing with, fatigue and other issues like that. But he was reporting on COVID, and then he goes birding with these folks who have long COVID. And I think that's so cool. So yeah, he's a really cool guy. I felt really lucky that I got to snag a blurb from him for my absolutely goofy book.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's this old Oscar Wilde quote that when I was looking at the birding dictionary, that where Oscar Wilde says, "If you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh. Otherwise, they'll kill you." And it's not entirely but like on the point. But like I think what I really like about you entertain while you educate, and there's just, people can check out the book and see, but there's, just like looking at American Robin, it says a device that converts worms into 100 decibel songs outside your bedroom at 4 a.m. So that's American Robin. That's one of many, many entries here. But I think there's the humorous stuff, but then there's longer stuff too, where you really you're teaching people while you're making them laugh. And that's a really great part of this project here. So thank you for that. It's good. It's good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize how educational it was. I think I can't help myself. I have to tell people facts. I think I'm one of those people. I was an annoying kid who had to tell everyone facts. But I like, this was one of those projects where I thought, okay, this is just silly. And then recently someone said, oh, I read your dictionary. And man, I learned so much. And I was like, oh, you did? And then I went and looked at it again. I was like, it is actually full of facts. There are facts in here.
Yeah.
But then there are absolutely ridiculous things that nobody needs to know. I learned when I was writing the entry for IBA, which is, of course, important bird area. I Googled it because I was trying to come up with a funny joke about IBAs. And one of the top hits for the letters IBA is something called the Iron Butt Association, which is this motorcycle club that tries to just motorcycle for a really long time so their butts hurt by the end of it. And so there's this reference to the Iron Butt Association, and I just I love that research takes you down those rabbit holes. I don't think I could sit on a motorcycle for a day. I think my butt would fall off, but I'm happy people are out there having a good time.
Did you not write an article about invertebrate butts? Or am I?
Yeah, years ago, a few friends and I started a week. We only did one. We need to bring it back. This was, I think, was it before the pandemic? It was, the world was in a rough state, but we started a week that focused on invertebrate butts, and we called it Invertebutt Week. It was me and this guy, Franz Anthony, Maureen Berg. I'm trying to think who else. There were so many people involved in it, and we made cartoons and did all kinds of art, and we wound up on Science Friday. And I said on national radio something like, I think everybody should hop on the butt train and ride it to Science Town. And I feel like if I was to sum up my career, it would be like getting on national radio to finally have a voice to the nation and saying something that ridiculous. So that was a great experience. But yeah, invertebrates have really wild butts, it turns out.
That might be my favorite question that's ever been asked on this podcast, Alvaro, is
Thank you.
Didn't you not write a article on invertebrate butts? And that the answer to that question was yes.
Yes. And with and even and more to it than that. One of the best quotes ever on Science Friday, I would gather. That's a t-shirt right there.
They were very nice.
Serious.
Yeah, they were super nice. Also, I appreciate that you asked that question without any accusation. You sounded very open.
No judgment. And that's rare from him. That is rare from Alvaro. He's nothing but judgment, that guy.
Yeah. Well, I if you're going to pick butts, invertebrates are good ones because there's all sorts of things going on there. Like the vertebrate butts, more, a little bit less variation going on, I would say. But,
there was, I think it all started because there was a worm that was discovered that had like hundreds of butts. Like it has a head, a normal head, and then it just splits into a huge number of butts, like this like beautiful branching tree of butts. And I was like, this is made for cartoons. Like this is just
you can't make this stuff up. Yeah,
I swear to God.
Exactly.
Nature.
Yeah. So the world needed to know.
Nature is awesome.
This is reminding me of you guys. You guys have surely seen that. It was like a Saturday Night Live skit, but I think it wasn't, on cloaxia. You should. If you guys haven't seen that, if listeners haven't seen that, you should definitely Google that. It is worth the watch. Yeah. The take home message is one hole. So I'll leave it at that. I will say no more.
Better than multi-butt worms.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my least popular comics, I never know what's going to be popular. One of my least popular comics was these two people who are looking at these, it was during a red pole eruption. So they're looking at these red poles and just talking amongst themselves like, oh, what beautiful birds. Oh, they're twittering to each other softly. I wonder what they're saying. And then it zooms in on the red pole and one of them is saying, did you hear that they pee and poop out of the two different holes? And they're just so disgusted. And nobody liked that. And I was like, fair. That's fine. I think it's funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
But it must just be so weird to them. But
Yeah.
you have a different style.
Like, look at
Yeah,
those humans.
You know, redpolls, though, they are moving in Canada way earlier this year than ever. So there's a thought that this is going to be a huge redpoll year.
Nice.
They're already
I've
being seen
heard. I'm so
in southern
excited.
Ontario. Yeah.
Well, Nostradamus, you did note
Predict things.
maybe just a week or so ago, you noted that the red-breasted nuthatches were on the move, and that often presages a finch
crop failure
thing behind it. I've had my this last week. I've had my first few red-breasted nuthatches, so eagerly awaiting the arrival of the
finch winter.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah. That last red pole eruption was incredible. And I was looking at a whole flock of them that were on the road, like on my car, all over the place. At I forget where it was, but it was one of the big snowy owl places, outside of Boston. And the entire time I was taking pictures of them, and I was just in bliss. People kept driving by and saying, "Hey, have you seen any snowy owls?" And I was like, "No, but the red poles." And they just go, "Oh," and they keep driving. You're really missing out.
Yeah,
great birds.
Definitely. Do you have any other book projects that in line that you can talk about? Or I mean, I'm sure you're with a mind like yours, you probably have all sorts of projects going on. But anything you're kind of working on now that you want people to know about?
Unfortunately, I have one that I can't talk about. I have a picture book that I'm really excited about. It's about an artist from Canada, and it's moving forward. So that one I'm stoked about. And then I'm working on potentially something that would aggregate a bunch of comics together. And then I have some other stuff that hasn't been picked up, but I'm working on. So not great at taking vacations. I should probably be better at it. I did take a vacation last week. I went to Tadoussac, Quebec, and went birding.
Oh, wow.
Had an incredible time, and it was my first vacation for like a year and a half.
Ooh.
That wasn't for a bird festival, so that was amazing.
And it was instead birding.
It was
whale
birding.
Watching?
Yeah.
A
little bit of whale watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Mostly I wanted to get it's just a beautiful place to hang out. And there's some hawk watching and stuff, but I really wanted to get my nemesis bird, which is a spruce grouse. I just wanted to get spruce grouse.
Yeah. The fool hen, as some have been known to call it.
Yeah, I get it now, because one of them a bunch of them kind of flew up from the road in front of me when I finally saw them, and one of them just climbed up onto a branch and stood like a couple feet from me and just yelled at me. She was just like yelling at me. Like I could have reached out and picked her up, and she was just like, "What are you doing here? Why are you in this forest? This is terrible."
Is there a spruce grouse cartoon coming soon? Then are we gonna?
I've been thinking about it. I've definitely been thinking. I mean, they would be fun to draw. They're so wild looking. They're really cool. Yeah. But I mean, we should call them fool hen. Like, who is more the fool? Probably the person who woke up at 5 a.m. to try to bother some spruce grass.
I'm pretty sure that's an Obi-Wan Kenobi quote, almost exactly like that. But yeah. I think I've talked about before that one of like the most profound, like moving birding experiences I've ever had was watching a male spruce grouse displaying to a female, and she just couldn't have looked less interested. And he was, he was all fluffed up doing his thing, and it was just, and like for as far as those two birds were concerned, we did not exist. It was me and a group of like 14 others, and it's just unforgettable moment, and such a great bird. And they can be incredibly hard to find. They can be so hard to find. So I'm glad. It sounds like you actually did connect with them. That's
finally, yeah.
That's good.
I was really happy. Yeah. There's a really, really amazing guy there called Jesse, who is like, he's the local reviewer. He's an incredible ornithologist, kind of a famous guy up in Tadoussac, and he had told me a couple of spots. And then when I came back and told him I got one, he was like, "You did? Really? I can't believe it. They're so hard to find." And I was like, "Oh, I kind of wish I'd known how challenging they were." But he was very surprised and really excited.
Nice. Well, Rosemary, thank you so much for doing this today. Really appreciate having you on and talking about your books. Have you gotten any other appearances coming up someplace that you want folks to know about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think by the time this podcast is out, I will have done the Urban Birding Festival in Chicago. I'm doing a talk. I will have done a talk in Manomet. Hopefully it went great. And I have, let's see, there's a couple in October, nothing that's super public. And then in the spring, I'm doing a crane festival in Colorado, which is really exciting because I've never been there, never been to the state. I've never been to a crane festival. And then next year, I'm doing Biggest Week again, the Biggest Week in American Birding in Ohio. I'm so excited. I love that festival. It's one of my favorite places. I'm always like in tears when I read. The people are so wonderful. So I'm giving a keynote there. And then maybe I'll take a nap after all of that is done. We'll see.
A well-earned nap. Yeah, boy, Biggest Week is going to be big next year. We were just talking to the Reiser brothers. They're going to be there as well, I think. Yeah, it's
such a great festival. Yeah. It's so inclusive. The birds are so incredible. I mean, you can't beat having like a bay-breasted warbler at eye level looking at you. Like you just can't beat it. There's no place like that. It's amazing.
Plus, with a bunch of good birding friends around, pretty tough to beat.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Rosemary. We will definitely include links to your books in the show notes, so folks should check those out. Definitely check her out on Instagram. There's a lot of good stuff there that you might not find elsewhere, some wonderful comics. And thanks again, Rosemary. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We will be back again soon with another episode of Life List, a birding podcast. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.